Is Rolls-Royce building the last of the old world luxury automobiles? Welcome to Petrol Lounge. Today I am looking at a 2020 Rolls-Royce Phantom 8. Ordinarily we start with the outside of the car first, but this car is really about the interior experience, so that's really where we're going to start today. And it really starts with these two big doors that, one is a suicide door and the other opens conventionally, and we've seen these on many cars, but here they're just really well done, really inviting, really nice weight to the doors. And they have this really neat feature that a lot of people don't know about, which is the door can actually stop anywhere. There's no detents like there is on your normal car where you have, the door kind of stops here and then sits. You can stop this door anywhere. You can put it here and it will stay, or you can open it to here and it'll stay, or you can go all the way to here. It's literally wherever you want this door to be. It has a little magnet that holds the door there once you put it there, and it takes fairly significant effort to get it moving again. One thing that everybody does talk about is, where's the umbrella in the doors? And on the Phantom, it is back here in the door. Small button, it pops out, and here is your nice umbrella. And it is a really nice piece. It's got a nice weight to it. This is all metal and chrome, and it feels wonderful in your hand. I'm not going to unwrap it. This one has never been unwrapped. It's never been used. I'd feel kind of bad being the first person to do that. I will say the umbrella in my Aston Martin is a little nicer. It's made of a wool material, and the finish out is actually just a little bit better, but this is a fine piece. If you've never picked up a Aston Martin umbrella, this is probably the nicest umbrella you've ever picked up in your life. It is the second nicest umbrella I've ever picked up. And it folds back in here really nicely and goes in with a nice little click. Interesting thing, everyone assumes on every Rolls that this is where the umbrella is. And there is an umbrella on all the modern Rolls. But on the Wraith, you will actually find it, it only has two doors. You'll find it in the fender of the car. It actually tucks into the front fender instead of back here into the door. And if I'm remembering correctly, it's been a while since we've had a Ghost in our care. The Ghost also does not have the umbrella in the back door. It has it in the front door. So it's not always here, but on the Phantom, on the big boy, on the really expensive one, this is where you're going to find it. So I really just kind of want to start with the back seat, because this is really where the magic kind of happens in this car. And I said earlier, suicide doors, that's not the terminology that Rolls-Royce would use. They prefer coach doors. So I step in through here with the coach doors, and interestingly enough, these seats are set really far back. So Rolls-Royce has thoughtfully provided this nice little handhold here at the top of the seat, and it is substantial. Like, you could pull on it with a lot of weight. It does move the seat a little bit, but it's nearly imperceptible. It feels substantial. It feels like, hey, this is a very solid piece of the car. If you want to pull yourself out of the back seat, this is where you would do it. And it also helps for just getting into the back seat, because it's, I always forget how nice it is to be back here. These seats are so unbelievably comfortable. And I also have to take this time to talk about the carpets down here. It feels like a hate crime getting into this car with my shoes on. The wool carpets in this car are nicer than the carpet in any home I've ever even been in, let alone owned on my own. It is so plush. It is so nice. Everyone that's ever touched these carpets is just amazed at how deep and lush it. If you told me the carpet is ankle deep, I'd nearly believe it. It feels that luxurious, and it's so nice. Most of the time when I get in this car, I take my shoes off anyway, just because it feels wrong to have shoes on it, and it just feels so nice otherwise when you don't have shoes on. And back here, it's really spacious and nice. Again, I said this car was more like an SUV than it is an actual car, and that carries over to this interior. There's so much room back here. I don't care how big of a person you are going to fit in this car and you're going to feel comfortable. It is just super plush, super luxurious. You feel like you have all the room in the world, but at the same time, this is a nice, cozy, secluded space. When you shut this door, and I'm going to show you something really incredible here. This is amazing. It's another one of these features you wouldn't really know and a lot of people miss. I'm wealthy. I have a lot of money. I'm sitting in my Rolls. To lean out here and grab this coach door and pull it shut, not only am I at an odd angle, it's really hard. You have to pull from the front of the door, and the door is heavy. And like I said, those magnetic door stops, you require some force. You really kind of have to pull. Well, they got that all figured out. There's a button up here. And I just shut the door. And now it's, even with these doors open over here, it's super quiet in this car. And if you shut those doors, the whole world disappears and goes away. When you ride in this car, when you're driving this car, you can't hear anything. You don't hear the outside world. You don't even hear the engine when it's running. You can turn it on, you can rev it, you can stomp on it, and you don't hear anything. It's just perfectly quiet back here. You can have a conversation with the front seat passengers where everyone's whispering at 90 miles an hour down the freeway, and everyone is going to hear everything perfectly clear. Super quiet in this car. And another thing where you don't really notice it until you're being driven in it, but there's a nice huge C-pillar back here, and there's a nice little mirror back here for me, but also this side mirror, this opera window or whatever, I said side mirror, side window, this opera window here, it's a little far forward. When I look out, I'm not actually looking through this window, I'm really looking about here. And it makes this feel even more enclosed. It makes it feel even more like, hey, I'm in a private suite. I'm in a private area. Where you really notice it is when people are driving by, and people do look at you in this car, just like anything of this caliber. People want to see who's in it. People want to see something they haven't seen before. If you're back here, you don't notice it. The one time I got to ride in this car, I even remarked, I was like, I'm surprised. Nobody's really looking at us. Nobody's really looking at the car. I feel like we're just in stealth mode going down the highway. And the driver actually laughed at me because what I hadn't seen, because I couldn't really see it and didn't really notice it, was everyone was looking at the car. Everyone was slowing down to get a better look. But back here, you didn't really notice it. I'm going to open the door again just to get the lights on again, because this car does time out like every car does. What else is back here? So when you're looking at this back seat, it really feels like a fairly simple car. And Rolls really does want that kind of air of luxury in the car, that you're not really in a technological spaceship like you are in, say, a Tesla. It's very old school elegance back here. You don't see any screens. You don't see any real controls. Earlier today, whenever I sat back here, I was like, oh, where are the seat controls? Because these are power seats, and I couldn't remember where they were, and I didn't see them. There didn't appear to be any buttons. There's some memory buttons on the door panel, but where are they? And they were actually hidden back here. When you fold this down, here's all of your seat controls here, and these are full power seats. They have just as much adjustability as the front seats do. They tilt, they lean, they recline. You can adjust the headrests. It's a really nice, luxurious seat. But again, everything is hidden. There's a button here. When you push this, this pops open. This control mimics the navigation controls, or really I should say the iDrive controls that are in the center console for the driver. Everything back here is controllable through this, or I shouldn't even say everything back here. Everything in the car is configurable through this. Almost anything that the driver would be able to control, I can control back here. The only thing that's locked out for me are what I would call driver specific functions. Like I can't adjust the mirrors back here. Only the driver can do that. And would I really want to? No, that seems kind of hazardous. A few of the other personalizations that are specific to the driver, I can't change back here. But everything else, if I want to put an address into the nav system, if I want to change the radio station, if I want to control the volume, well actually the volume controls are right here by the door button. But everything I can control back here. Now you will ask me, well, how can you see what you're controlling? Because there's a screen on the dash that the driver gets, but where's your screen? I don't see any screens. Well, there's a button here on the seat, and this folds out my tray, and it's a nice little airline style tray. That's a nice wood. I believe this is probably mahogany, or though it might just be piano. I'm not sure. Everything on these cars is bespoke. I want to talk about that later. But right now we're talking about this. Again, the screen isn't really evident. You actually have to extend the screen here, and this is your screen. Here, now I can control everything inside the vehicle again. And that's kind of that hidden, understated elegance. And this all folds away when I'm done. I hit the button and it retracts and the tray table folds up. I don't even have to think about or bother with any of that. You have some cup holders. They're down here and they fold out. Again, you're looking at nice metal, and there's a little bit of plastic in here, but not like you would see on most production cars. This does not have the power function. You do just have to close it. There's a little glove box back here for small stuff. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, I always hear these things have, some kind of crazy refrigerator or cooler somewhere. Now, every one of these cars is bespoke. You talk to the people at Rolls-Royce about how you would like your artwork done, because they consider this effectively a piece of art. And there is no, we start with, well, here's where the cooler is. There's several options. This one only has one, but you can have as many as 4 or 5 in the car. This one is hidden. Again, there's a leather piece back here, and it has a little pull string, but if you didn't notice that, you might never even consider that there's anything behind it. And what I originally expected to be back here would be a pass-through. That's what you would normally have. You pull this down and, okay, I've got a pass-through to the trunk. And there is a little door here. It looks like a pass-through. But when you open this, there's not a pass-through at all. There's actually a couple of pieces of glassware. And these are crystal, absolutely. I mean, what would you expect, right? And they're enclosed in this nice little case with a really solid locking mechanism to keep them in place. Now, I'm not quite fancy enough to have a nice bottle of champagne. I wish I did. I should have gone out and probably bought one to include in this video in the car. But your refrigerator's back here, and it has just enough room for one nice big bottle of champagne. And, it cools down really quickly. And if you wanted, you could open this up, have your nice little champagne party with your passenger. But if you weren't, you'd never know this was here. And that's a lot of this on the Rolls-Royce. All the little compartments and stuff. You have a DVD player down here. But again, it's going to be hidden behind a panel because Rolls-Royce is thinking, in 15, 20 years, this is still going to be a fine piece of luxury automobile. You're still going to want to ride in this car. You're still going to want this car. It'll have its own style of elegance, but you don't really want to be reminded of all the old tech that's still in the car. And if this is old tech, which it probably will be in 15 years, you don't even have to look at it. You can just pretend it's not even there. It goes away like it never existed at all. It's a wonderful elegance in this car. And that even goes over to the controls in this car. Everything has kind of a weight to it. All the vents have this kind of old school, most people call it a Bentley style, but really Bentleys were just fancy Rolls-Royces. So this really is the kind of thing that Rolls-Royce has been doing for a long time. You don't have a little dial that you turn to open and close the air conditioning vents. Each vent has this little organ pull that you push in to close the vent off entirely, or you pull it open as far as you like. You know, if you want 50% or you want it full, here it is. And then you have these nice controls in the door over here for all of your heating and cooling. And every passenger has one of these in the door. And they also have a nice weight. I wish you could be here with me to feel this. It's really kind of unlike most dials like this that I have experienced. It's got a light feel to it, but at the same time, it feels heavy and substantial. The stops are really noticeable. And curiously enough, it doesn't have a digital readout. You don't set this to, like, say, 72 degrees and it cools to that. No, you just kind of set it where you feel comfortable. And the car will adjust to that. And if you think you need to be a little warmer, well, you push it a little warmer. Or if you want it to be a little colder, then you just make it a little colder. And there's a nice little dial over here. You know, and again, it's pretty weighty. It's got really nice stops, really nice kind of, I don't want to call them clicks because they don't feel like clicks. It's not a snap. It's just a soft touch. And, well, I've turned on the AC. You may actually hear that in the video. You may not. I don't know. Should have known better than to touch the AC knobs here. Now that everything's kind of died down a little bit with the air conditioning, I have kind of saved the best for last back here. The first thing that you really notice when you finally get settled back here in the seat is this starlight headliner that's in the ceiling. And it is truly this showcase piece. It is an expensive option. Not everyone goes for it, but it's the kind of thing, after seeing these, I have to ask why. Why you wouldn't buy this, I have no idea. It is impressive and substantial, and it behaves in some really subtle ways, particularly once the car is on and the engine is running. So let's just start off with this pattern. A lot of people think it's just entirely random. It's not. This is an actual star map with the intensity and the brilliance and the pattern of the stars in the sky. Now, this is a custom piece, so you can pick any area of the sky that you want. You can pick any date that you want. Maybe it's where you propose to your wife and you're like, hey, we proposed on this mountaintop in Kenya and it was at 11:30 at night and that's what I want this to replicate. And they'll do that. Or I don't know, maybe it's, I was born in this town on this day at this hospital and I want the star pattern for that day in that area. No problem, that's what you get. Some people don't even choose a star map. They want something completely different. They're like, I want the stars to spell my name across the sky. Rolls-Royce will do that for you. And some people don't choose a date or time, and people have asked me many times, well, what if you don't know what you want or it doesn't really matter to you? Is there a default? And actually there is. The default star pattern, and I don't know what star pattern this is, and I don't know the relevance to the owner or if there is a relevance, but the default is the sky over the Rolls-Royce factory on their 50th anniversary. So that is a special date for them, and that's what they choose. But again, you can have anything. And what's amazing is when you first look at it, you think this is just a static display. But when the engine's on and the car is running, these lights actually twinkle a little bit. They fade out and they fade back in, and it's really dynamic. And then if you sit back here long enough, every once in a while, there's a shooting star that goes across the sky. And I've never heard anyone mention this. I've never heard anyone in any videos talk about it. I didn't know about it. It was one day I was back here, and I don't even remember why I was back here or what we were doing, but all of a sudden one of those stars goes shooting across the sky, and I was like, oh my God. It just took me by surprise, and I had to wait long enough to see another one. And there, I I noticed that there is a button up here that you can change the intensity. It happens, I would say, roughly every 30 seconds at full intensity. You can turn it all the way off entirely if you don't like it. And you can also change the brightness of the star pattern. Now myself, I would keep it on full all the time and have it at full brightness and have the shooting stars all the time. I will say it is a little distracting. Interestingly enough, if you are the driver, the star pattern is mostly out of your field of view and all of the shooting stars are out of your field of view. So it's not like, you know, you're a driver and the owner of the car has got the whole thing cranked to maximum and is really enjoying the discotheque effect of it. You'll never even notice. You don't really know that that's going on. But from back here, all you see are stars, and it's really incredible. And speaking of back here, not only do you have the standard accompaniment of lights and everything, but you also have, well, these would be visors if they were in the front seats, but it's a nice little lighted mirror so that, you know, if you need to get ready for, or your girlfriend needs to get ready for the opera or whatever before you get out of the car, you just want to make sure, hey, do I have anything on my face? You know, I'm about to meet the public. Is everything okay? Man, it's a really nice mirror, and I gotta say, you look incredible when you look in it. The lighting is always fantastic. Rolls-Royce did a really great job, and they fold up really nicely into the roof. And you also have these nice leather straps here, these nice little pulls. They're also really substantial. This helps you get out of the back seat. Like I said, you're really kind of stuck back here once you're in. Getting out, I don't want to say there's not an elegant way to get out, but you're not just going to step out of the car like you do in a normal automobile. You really do need these pull straps or this nice handhold on the front seat to kind of pull yourself forward so that now you can begin to exit the car and make your nice, elegant exit out of your wonderful, beautiful Rolls-Royce. Moving inside the driver's seat now, this isn't exactly where you want to be in a Rolls-Royce, but it is a really nice place to be if you have to drive one of these. So getting in, one thing I didn't talk about yet, and it is something you do notice as you're getting into the car, there's a lot of leather in this car. It's something like 12 cowls go into the leather of this car, and it's just a phenomenal leather. You look at it and it is perfectly smooth with no blemishes or anything anywhere. And I know that Rolls-Royce keeps really tight quality control on their cattle, in that the farm that they're at is not allowed to have any barbed wire, and it's in an area of the country where it is known for not having any mosquitoes or any real insect problems. And that's because they want this leather to be absolutely perfect. So when the cows are used for their leather, they are absolutely 100% perfect, and everything is just covered in this leather. In so many cars, you do see, you know, oh, the seats are leather, or, you know, I've seen metal covered with leather before, but this is the first time that I've ever actually seen plastic covered with leather. Literally everything is leather. When I'm looking at the seat, it's not just the seating surfaces, it's not just the side pieces here. It's even this plastic panel here, which in every other car on the planet is going to just be plastic, because what are you going to do with that? No, it's actually leather. It's really subtle. You kind of have to know, but as you touch it, you realize, no, it doesn't feel like plastic. And if you feel the bottom edges, you can actually feel, oh yeah, they tucked leather all the way up and around. And it's just amazing. And it even goes to the stalks on the steering wheel. I've never seen this before on anything. The stalks on the steering column are actually wrapped in leather, and there's a nice little stitching along the back side to, I don't want to say to remind you that it's leather, but it is a nice touch. You do notice this. But even some of the knobs on the center part of the dash, those have little bits of leather trim around them. It's everywhere in this car. It's really wonderful. And since we're talking about it, let's just go on inside and let's talk about what it's like to actually sit in the driver's seat and what it's like to drive this behemoth of an automobile. So now that I'm sitting here in the car, again, words are kind of failing me here. I can say it's nice, it's wonderful, it's luxurious, it's all these things, but it's just so much more than that. It really is just one of the most comfortable seats you've ever sat in. And everything is just such quality and so beautiful. And I have trouble finding anything to criticize in this interior, anything that I'm like, oh, that could have been done better. I don't know what you could have done better here. Anything that I think about doing differently or what I would want in a car, it's really something that if I were buying this car from Rolls-Royce, I could configure it the way I wanted. I could get that changed, have a different color, have a different material, have a different piece of artwork. That's something else that a lot of people don't realize. This car is so custom. Even the artwork that's here in the gallery on the dash, that is a custom piece of artwork. Now, they do have like kind of styles that you can pick from if you don't have something particularly custom that you want or want to pay for. But every single one of these styles, every single one of these cars, that is a unique piece. This will not be replicated in any other car. So just an extra little nice thing that Rolls-Royce includes that maybe you never notice it. Maybe nobody ever knows. Maybe nobody ever talks about it, but it is here in the car. Now, everything here is also hidden again. I've got a lot of controls, but they're all very manual, buttons and everything else. I do have a screen, although this screen actually does fold away and hide behind here. The unfortunate thing is a lot of the controls go through it, so if for whatever reason you can't get the screen to come up, it's going to be difficult to do a lot of things with your car. You will have to defer to your rear seat passengers to control a lot of the functions of the car. Speaking of, now that I'm here in the driver's seat, people often ask like, well, okay, I paid all this money for the car. I've got 2 kids, I've got my wife. The kids are 5 years old and, hey, they're not going to drive the car. And there's 4 of us. We can't really have somebody chauffeur us around. And I have the kids in the back seat. Everything's controllable in the back seat. What am I going to do? I can't have the kids constantly changing the radio, changing the nav, doing all this crazy stuff. Well, in this car, the child locks don't just lock out the rear windows, they lock out all the controls of the back seat. So literally, if the child locks are on in this car, nothing back there works. It's kind of, it's amazing, but also if it's on and you don't realize it's on and you sit in the back seat and you start going, well, why does nothing work back here? Even the door close buttons don't work. It may take you by surprise. Like you may be kind of worried that, hey, my car doesn't really work, but it does. I guess really what to talk about here that's really different is, what is the driving experience of this car? Because you are sitting in the driver's seat. What is it like to pilot this down the road? And it is really unlike pretty much anything else that you would drive today. And I say that, of course, you're going in your mind, oh, well, of course, it's Rolls-Royce. How could it not be different than everything else? True, but Rolls-Royce has a different version of luxury than most people, and it's a style of luxury that has all but disappeared from the market space. Back in the 1970s and even the 1980s, there was this real American style of luxury that was this kind of isolation from the road. I definitely remember it from my childhood. The cars, we called them land yachts. They were very floaty. There was a lot of body roll. Everything was over boosted. You didn't have a lot of connection to the road. Even as a driver, you didn't have that connection. And, Mercedes-Benz and BMW went a very different way with their luxury, where it was very much about the sports sedan. It was all about your connection to the road, and these are Autobahn cruisers. And today, everyone has kind of gotten into that game. Even Cadillac, who was one of the last ones to really sell that style of luxury to what I would say is your grandparents, even they have embraced this kind of sports sedan. We test our cars at the Nürburgring. We're putting manual transmissions in our cars. That luxury style kind of has disappeared from the market space, but you do find it here. And that's the strangest thing about driving this car is you're really not connected to the road in any way. I talked about the sound isolation being in this car, but even when you're driving it, you realize the isolation is near total. And it's not to say that you can't tell what the car is doing. You can, but you don't have that tactile sense of feedback that you have in, I'll just say, a Mercedes-Benz. I don't really know what the tires are doing down there. I don't know what the surface of the road is really like. It's all kind of vague feeling. The steering is way, way over boosted. I could just turn the steering wheel with my fingertips. It just isn't about the road feel. I mean, you're not really supposed to be the driver of this car. It's supposed to be about the passenger comfort. And you can drive this car over speed bumps, over huge potholes. You'll know that you did, but you're not really gonna feel it in here. And that's the magic of the luxury here. And because no one else is doing it, it feels really special. Now, there is some body roll in this car that you don't get in pretty much anything else. There's no way of getting around it. When the car rides this soft, when it's this softly sprung, you're just gonna have it. It's not terrible. It's not 1970s land yacht. It's not like you turn the wheel and the whole car just rolls over and the passengers get seasick. This does have adaptive handling. So when you turn the car into a corner, you do feel that initial kind of floatiness, but then the suspension stiffens up and the car actually corners like you expect a car to do. But it's really surreal as a driver. You have to kind of get used to it because I don't want to say it doesn't handle. The car can go around a corner relatively quickly. You'd be surprised, but you lack any real feeling of what the car is doing, and it does just feel like you're kind of floating over the ground. It's a hovercraft effect, and you just have to learn to trust the car. You have to learn to trust that the car is doing what it will do, and everything is going to be fine. But it's not, it really isn't a driver's car. But it was never meant to be a driver's car. And if you expect that from it, well, you're going to be disappointed. But I don't know how you can really be disappointed in this car. It is special. You feel special in it. Driving it is a special experience. It's just wonderful. I love this car. I don't know that it's the kind of car that I would ever own. I don't know that I would ever want to spend the kind of money that you have to spend to get into this car. We're talking about a $500,000 automobile, and that's before you sit down with Rolls and you say, oh, this is what I want in the car. I think the median value is somewhere around $600,000 by the time you get done configuring it. There's a lot of cars you can buy for that. And you know, especially if you say, well, I'm only going to spend $250,000 on a car and I'm going to get another $250,000 car and then another $200,000 car. There's a lot of cars I'd have to combine to get this car. Is it worth it? Actually, it is. It really is worth the money. 100% worth the money. I just don't know if it would ever be worth it to me. I don't know that I could ever spend that kind of money, but God, would I dream about it? Absolutely. Do I think it's worth it? Absolutely. There's nothing else like this car on the planet. I don't care what you're looking at spending. I don't care who you go to. No one else makes a Rolls-Royce. Nobody makes an equivalent. Nobody makes anything nicer. Nobody makes anything that's better to roll around in. It is still truly this world-class automobile that is head and shoulders above everything else. It's just really incredible. It's incredible what they've built. Now, again, owing back to its non-performance roots, when you start this car, even with the door open, it's not especially loud. The engine's not particularly loud. If I shut the door, I can't hear the engine. So we're actually seated in the car now with the door shut, with the engine on. I've got the AC off. And I highly doubt that even the sensitive microphone that I've got on is picking up any engine noise at all. I can kind of hear it if I'm listening for it, if I'm really tuned into it. But even when I rev the engine, it's real quiet back there. I barely even hear it at all. If I turn on the air conditioning, it's just going to go away entirely. There's going to be no sound whatsoever. And it's not that the air conditioning is especially loud. It's just the engine is that quiet. Now, you do not get a tachometer in this car. You get what they call a power reserve meter. And it's kind of interesting and different in that it starts at 100%. So it starts out pegged all the way on the other side. And then as you dip into the throttle and you use more power out of the engine, it actually goes back the other way and shows you that you have less and less power available for, I guess, getting away from the paparazzi or whoever else. Now the AC is on now. I can hear it. You may be able to pick that up on the microphone. Revving the engine now, there's virtually no noise. I can't even hear anything. And again, I could have a really, really quiet conversation here. This is pretty much me whispering, and I don't doubt that anybody in the car would have trouble hearing me. It's a really quiet vehicle. Now, the controls for the driver are also hidden away up here, much like they are in the back seat. They're down here in the center console. You have to push a button, and then you have this fold-out piece. Interesting thing about this, something that, again, this isn't talked about much. It is a standard iDrive control, and it rotates back and forth. You have your buttons around the edge, but also this piece in the center can also be used to navigate. It's like an arrow up, an arrow down, left, right, kind of backspace. But you can also draw on it and write letters. Like if I'm looking at the owner's manual and I want to do a search or I want to put in an address, I can actually spell out addresses here on this little kind of touchpad that's here. Beneath it, you'll find that there's some adaptive controls for the suspension. You can raise and lower this car. And there is the parking lights over here. No, it's not hazard. It is parking sensors. Sorry, parking sensors. A lot of times it's hard to get completely familiar with these cars in the few minutes you have before you sit down with them. This button here actually turns on the cameras for the car so that you can see what's going on outside the vehicle. And we're going to try to demonstrate this later. This is one of the only vehicles in the whole world market that comes with night vision standard. This car does have night vision, and we'll turn that on in a minute. We'll turn off all the lights in the garage, and we'll actually see what we can see with the night vision in this car. Like I said, Rolls-Royce is the only one that equips it standard with all of their vehicles. Every other manufacturer that has it, which I think GM is the only other one that does it, it is always an option on those vehicles. You have to spec it out, but not in this car. I don't know. I want to talk about things in here, but really and truly from the driver's standpoint, there's not really a whole lot to talk about. It's pretty standard. You've got regular steering controls here. They control mostly the same kind of stuff that they do in every other car. Nothing is really what I would call out of the ordinary. One thing I do notice, though, holding the steering wheel is that Rolls-Royce is so much about the old school luxury. This steering wheel has a very old world feel to it. It's all covered in leather, of course. I would have expected it to be wood, and I'm sure that is an option that you can get if you talk to Rolls. Hey, I'd rather have a wood steering wheel. I'm positive they'll do that for you. But it's a very thin steering wheel. Everyone has gone to these big, chunky, fat steering wheels with modern cars. I guess for a better feel when you're driving it in a performance manner. But here, it's a really thin steering wheel. It feels much more like a 1930s Rolls than it feels like a modern automobile. Really nice touch that Rolls has done here. All the buttons, of course, they're all metal or they're crystal, and they do feel like they're metal or crystal. Same with these vents. They're metal. They have a nice weight and a nice feel. But really, again, you're not really looking at anything out of the ordinary here. Everything is hidden. Your ashtray is going to be hidden. Your cup holders are going to be hidden away, and your little change drawer here is going to be hidden away. I've put the key in here, and this is a really nice key. It's a little large. It's also very heavy. I can't say it's the most comfortable thing to carry around, but it does have a nice weight to it. And one of the things that one of my old roommates said years ago, he was like, the more expensive a thing is, the smaller it gets and the heavier it gets. And I kind of feel like they did that here, where you really do feel the weight of this key. It's got a leather back on it that matches the leather in the car. And I don't think this is shared with any other automobile. I don't recognize it from any other manufacturer, so it is something that is specific to this car, which is also a really nice touch. You look at it, you know it's a Rolls key, you know what it belongs to. You're not fishing around your other keys going, oh, I wonder where that key is. No, this is the Rolls key. You know it is. It's really nice. It's a beautiful piece. And with that, I think we're kind of done with the interior. I mean, I could show you the glove boxes, but they're, pretty standard size, and there's not really anything special about them other than they're a glove box and a Rolls. But yeah, it's just a really nice place to be. I do know something that I have forgotten, and it involves the doors. I did show you on the rear doors, when we shut those doors, you really don't want to lean way out here and close the door. And one thing about these doors, they don't really have great door pulls. You usually expect to see a door pull about here. It feels like there's one here, but when you pull on it, you realize you're pulling on this trim piece on the door, and that's not really where you're supposed to pull. You're supposed to pull from here, but let's be honest, this isn't how you're meant to close the door. There's a button right here, and I can close the front doors just like I did the back doors. And from this seat, I can also close the passenger doors as well. It's just a really nice touch, and it's really wonderful. The passenger has their own button as well. So all of the doors in this car are power, and they have their own buttons in the interior. And as I get out of this car, I'm going to show you something really special about the exterior as well. This is really great. So now that we are outside the car again, you would go to shut the doors, and these doors have a nice touch to them in that when you shut the door, you don't have to slam it. You can just gently push it shut, and the door will actually shut all the way on its own, even if you just barely shut the door. But I know what you're thinking. I was just using the buttons inside to shut the doors, and I mean, I'm outside my Rolls-Royce. Why do I have to shut these doors manually? Why do I actually have to push them all the way to close them? The fact is, you don't. There's a subtle little button here that most people miss, and if you just push on it a little bit, these are full power doors, and they shut all the way. It's really phenomenal. I love these kind of touches on a car. Let's spend a few minutes just kind of going over the exterior. It is really understated. It's very elegant, but understated. And I don't want to say there's a lot to talk about here because there isn't, but it's really easy to overlook. And I don't want this to go overlooked. There's some really special things about the outside. There's some really incredible things here. And, it starts with some of the things that kind of everyone knows, like the Rolls-Royce logo here on the wheel always faces upright. It's always going to look like this. And when you park the car, it's always upright. And this has been a feature on the Phantoms for several generations now, but it's something that pretty much no one else does other than Rolls-Royce. Something that Rolls-Royce did a few generations back is they changed this where it actually retracts down into the hood of the car. And this is a configurable setting in the car. You can raise and lower it from inside the car, but you can also have it set where when you lock the doors, this actually retracts into the grille, and it serves as kind of an anti-theft device. And everyone has also heard about the fact that, if you manhandle this thing, that as an anti-theft device, it retracts down into the hood automatically. And it does, but it's actually not really an anti-theft device, although it functions quite well in that regard. it's really for pedestrian safety. If you were to hit someone with this car, these kind of ornaments have all but disappeared from modern vehicles because they are a real hazard to pedestrians. But in this instance, if something does impact this hood ornament, it immediately and quickly retracts down into the grille, and it hides away, and you know, it disappears. Now you do have to tell it to come back once you're inside the car. If it's activated either by somebody trying to wrench this thing off the car, or if you have, you know, somebody bump into it, then you do have to go inside the car. You do have to raise it again, or actually what you have to do is you have to lower it first, because the car doesn't believe that it's actually lowered in the anti-collision, anti-theft position. So you lower it and then you can raise it again. And it actually doesn't take a whole lot to get this to drop down. I would say it's a good firm push on it. I mean, I can bump it right now pretty well, and it's not going to retract, but it's not like you just have to come along and really whack the heck out of it. If you bump it with any kind of force, it will immediately drop down into the grill. And speaking of the grill, another nice touch here, all of these fins, they are all on a servo and they do pivot. They're all open right now. We are in Texas, even though we're indoors. Texas is warm. There's no reason that you would want the engine to warm up quicker. But if you were in a cold climate, if it was 30 degrees outside, or maybe it's negative 30 degrees outside, these slats all close, and it allows the engine to warm up even quicker, so that your heat inside the cabin is available to you that much sooner. This is one of those nice little luxury touches that, you know, pretty much only Rolls-Royce does. Walking along the side of the car here, you can kind of get a sense of how big the car is just by me standing next to it. Now, I am what a lot of people refer to as race car sized. I'm not a huge guy. I'm not, you know, super wide. I'm not super tall. I'm not 6 foot. I'm about 5'7", 5'8". But really, I could just barely even see over the roof of this car. It is a tall automobile. And you just can't get away from this thing is substantial and gargantuan and large. And that carries over all the way back here to the trunk, which I'll go ahead and open up for you. It's just this absolute gargantuan trunk. It may be the largest trunk I have seen on any automobile anywhere. I don't know what you couldn't put back here. It's really just enormous. You could practically sleep back here if you really wanted to. Not quite, and I wouldn't recommend it, but yeah, it's amazing. There's not really anything back here. Some luxury cars do have a lot of little gadgets and stuff in the trunk, or little extras. Rolls-Royce is a little more simple than that. It's really just a trunk. It's a big space for you to put things in. There's not really anything much hidden back here. There's just a nice little button that you can press to close it all up again. Now, in some ways, a Rolls-Royce is a BMW product. So when we go to open the hood here, it is a double pull on the latch. One pull opens the hood, but you have to have a safety latch. And ordinarily, you would go around to the front of the car, there'd be a physical latch. But much like the BMW M5 that we did recently, this requires a second pull on the latch. The second pull is what is your second catch. So opening the hood here reveals this absolutely massive 6 3/4. Is that what we're saying? This absolutely massive 6 3/4 liter V12 engine, and it is substantial. It makes 563 horsepower, over 600 foot-pounds of torque. And that's really the important figure, because the horsepower tells you how fast you're going to go. The torque really tells you how quickly you're going to get there. And with a car that is as substantial as this car, you really do need that torque to kind of move it forward. And it makes peak torque around 1,700 RPM. So it's not like you have to rev that engine way up to get all the torque. It's going to make that torque way down low. And this car really drives much more like an electric automobile than it does a gasoline-powered automobile. It makes all the power down low. It makes power everywhere all the time. And when you're driving it, you really do notice that, you know, Rolls-Royce has always advertised the horsepower and torque as adequate. And that's really actually a good description. You never seem to want more, and whatever you need the car to do, it seems like you have plenty of power to do it. I mean, this is not a sports car. You're not going to go carve up canyon roads. You're not going to try to set fast lap times at the Nürburgring. But you never feel like, oh, if I have to shoot a gap in traffic, or, you know, somebody's following me and I just kind of want to get away from them. You feel like you always have plenty of power on tap, in reserve. This car does move much faster than its bulk and heft would have you believe. It's kind of like a NFL lineman, you know, they can run really fast 440s, and you wouldn't think it, but you know, because they're so athletic, they can move that bulk very quickly. That's how this car is. It moves very, very fast, especially for what it is. I love this car. I love everything about it. I love my experience with it. The few times that I've been able to enjoy either a drive or a ride in this automobile, it's truly otherworldly. And I lack the vocabulary to fully express it. And maybe it's just not something I can truly express, or anybody can truly express, because, like I said, it is so different. There's no comparisons that you can make. It is just a Rolls-Royce. If you ever have the opportunity to be near one, or be in one, or ride in one, you absolutely have to take that opportunity, because it's not anything you're going to get anywhere else. And with that, that kind of wraps up our video. Please hit like and subscribe. We've got all this content coming your way. I mean, I know you're looking in the background. I know you're seeing stuff back here. I'm sure that you're like, hey, wait, what about that? And what about this? And we're going to get to all that. I promise you we are. It's going to take time, but we're going to be there, and you want to be there for it. So until next time,